Hey guys, so this demo is to show you how to move a photo that you've been editing in Lightroom over to Photoshop and continue to edit it there doing things that only Photoshop can do. So I'm here in the develop module with my photo. This demo assumes that you've done all your global and local adjustments here in the basic panel or maybe using your adjustment brush, etc. here in Lightroom. So the next step when you're ready is to go up here to the photo menu, click photo, go down here to edit in, and then choose edit in Adobe Photoshop. Now, hopefully the version that you have should say Photoshop CC 2018. Although if it says something else, that's fine. But hopefully it's updated. And it's going to ask you these questions. Do you want to edit a copy of the photo with Lightroom adjustments? Do you want to edit just the original file but still have it make a new copy? Or do you want to edit the original? You always just want to leave it here on this top one, edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, because you've just done all the work in Lightroom of editing. You don't want to edit something that doesn't have those adjustments. And also you never want to change the original, because what if you decide you don't like it and you accidentally permanently save it, then you can never get back to your original. So you just hit edit and it's going to launch Photoshop, which is a separate program. Now these are really big, hefty programs. Sometimes it takes a while for them to launch. I'm at home and I have, maybe faster internet possibly, so it might have just launched faster than yours does, but just try to be patient. Don't open a bunch of other applications at the same time. In fact, if it's being really slow, try checking down here to see how many applications you have open and try quitting some of them. So like, for example, I have Spotify open. I could just click and hold on the icon and go to quit. I have Chrome open. I could quit Chrome as well. So if it's running slowly, try quitting some applications. That can sometimes help. Okay, so this demo is just going to show you the basic layout of what Photoshop is, and then you're going to get some time to play around with it. So first of all, just kind of take a look. You can see that your workspace here looks a little bit different than Lightroom does. Again, different programs, different setup. So this here is called your canvas. This space right here. So because I moved a photo over and opened it, the canvas and the photo are the same size. But it is possible if you create a new document from scratch just by opening Photoshop first to make a canvas that isn't the same size as your photo. So just kind of pay attention to that. Over here you'll see this area that is called the layers panel. This is, I know I always say this, this is probably the most important thing to understand about Photoshop. And as I've mentioned before, it was the kind of the big deal thing that made Photoshop the dominant editing program, and it's this idea of layers. So when you have layers, I'm trying to think of an example. Like imagine layers of a sandwich. You have the bread on the bottom, you have like the meat and then the cheese and then the whatever and your mayo and your mustard and then another piece of bread. So imagine if you're trying to like mess with each one of those pieces, you could do it in Photoshop. You can do them all separately. So you could mess with the cheese without affecting the meat or the bread. This is a terrible metaphor, but I'm going to show you what I mean in a second. So I moved this photo in here and it immediately became the background layer. So you can see here the word background. You can see a tiny picture of my layer, of my photo. You can see this little eyeball and you can see this little lock. So you're always going to start with a background layer that is locked. So you'll notice if I try to come over here and if I try to move it, it's not going to let me. It's saying you can't do it because it's locked. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click this lock and then I'm just going to hit OK. And now that lock is gone and it no longer says background layer, it just says layer 0 now. So now when I move it across, you'll notice that it lets me, and it also reveals this checkerboard. In digital editing land, a checkerboard pattern means that the space is transparent. So like a piece of clear plastic, like there's nothing here at all. And if I were to print this out, all I would see is this rectangle right here of my photo. The rest of it would not show up because I've moved it off my canvas. So if I wanted something to be see-through, I would want to see this checkerboard to show me, okay, yeah, it's really see-through. Obviously, just putting it as white doesn't work because you could just have the color white, right? So the checkerboard is code for transparency. Okay, so I'm going to move that back by hitting Command Z. Remember, that's our friend if you ever want to go back and undo something. There's so many tools for me to show you, but I'm going to hold off and mostly kind of just show you again how the layers work today. So if I have several layers stacked on top of each other and I want to make a couple of them so that I can't see them for a second, I can hit this eyeball and it makes it so that the layer is hidden. It's still there. You can see it's still there. And I can bring it back so I can see it just by hitting the eyeball again. But sometimes you have so many things going on, you just want to take it away so you can't see them for a little bit. Notice I've got my histogram up here. You can also click over and reveal the navigator, which shows you a smaller version, in case you're working really big, smaller version of your screen here so you can kind of keep track of things. If you were to create a new layer, like let's say you wanted to put one photo on top of another, which is something we're going to do, this little icon right here that looks like a box with the corner turned up is how you create a new layer. So you just click on that and you get a new layer. It's going to come up on top of the layer that we were working in before. So I'm just really quickly going to show you, I'm going to draw a shape. I'm not going to draw a shape. Huh. Never mind. I'm not going to draw a shape. I'm going to create some text. So I just want you to see what it looks like to layer some things on top of each other. Okay. So now I've put this text on top of here, and you see I've got actually three things going on now. I have my blank layer, I have a text layer that just shows me what's written there, and they're all on top, stacked on top of each other. So let's say I were to move this photo layer on top of everything. Do you see how the text disappeared? It's because this layer is on top of it, and this layer is what we would call opaque, meaning not see-through at all. If I wanted to see through this, make it more transparent, and be able to see the text underneath, I can go over here to my opacity. I have to make sure I have this layer selected. You can see it's selected because it's kind of fuzzy gray. And I can turn down the opacity. Whoa. Okay, and then I'm going to be able to see my text through this layer. So again, this is basically the big thing about Photoshop, is that it allows you to do these layers, and I only can edit one at a time. So if I'm here editing my text, I can do that without affecting my other layers, without like damaging them or accidentally deleting things from those other layers. See how that didn't affect my background photo at all. What else do I want to show you? Over here are your tools. You can choose different tool setups. This one is just kind of the default setup, but eventually you might want to customize which tools you see here. But there are so many tools that don't even appear, and you may still need to use them. These tools are grouped in kind of like families, like of similar tools. So for example, this one on top here is the Move tool. It's the one that you have to have selected in order to move things. But if you see this little tiny corner, that means that there's stuff stacked underneath. So if I click and just hold down, I see that I'm working in the Move tool right now, but there's another tool underneath it called the Artboard tool. I don't even know what that does, but I know that there's something under there because it has that little corner, and almost all of these have that. So when I click and hold, I see that there are several tools kind of stacked up together. You can actually change and edit the way that they're stacked by clicking here to these dots. And you see where it says Edit Toolbar. And then there's all these other options. And there's also the keyboard shortcut. So you can see a letter here, for example, like the letter J, and that's a keyboard shortcut for that tool. But again, that's kind of getting ahead. A thing that will annoy you that you might forget about, but is good to remember, is that you have to switch tools to be in the right tool in order to do what you think you're doing. Like especially I'll notice people are trying to move things, but they're not in the Move tool. So for example, if I'm over here in this lasso tool, but all I want to do is move this, if I'm doing this, just trying to move the text, it's doing what the tool I have open is designed to do, which is to create a selection, which I'll show you in another demo. But basically, if I need to move something, I have to remember to go, well, you can hit escape if you want to get out of the tool that you're currently in, or you can just come back here to click to the tool that you want to change to. And it just takes some practice to get the hang of that. But if you notice like, what's going on? Like I'm not able to move something. It's like, well, are you in the Move tool? So just get used to having to switch to the tool that does the thing that you want to do. Okay. So one last thing I want to show you is the history palette. It is kind of abbreviated here. Let's see if I can make it bigger so you can see. There we go. So if we click here, it actually shows me like literally a history of everything that I've done since I opened this document. So let's say I'm like, I want to see what this looked like 5 edits ago. You can just click here in the list and it actually takes me back in time to a simpler time when everything went. So this is the very first step when I just brought the image in. Those other steps aren't gone. I can go back to them. But it's a really nice way, instead of having to hit Command Z 5,000 times, to just be like, I'm going to go back 5 steps and just click here. And then once you're tired of using the history palette, you can use these double arrows to make it collapse again. So this setup is completely customizable. You can change, like you maybe saw before, you can change how big each of these panels are. You can hide them. Again, I really recommend hiding things that you don't know how to use, but you absolutely 100% of the time need to have your layers palette visible, because all of the mistakes you're going to make as a beginner are probably going to have to do with your layers, especially if you can't see them over here. Keep track of this palette right here. Never close it. Keep it open. Okay, so for today, I'd just like you to literally play around, move a photo in, play around, see what happens, and I'd like you to write down 5 questions that come up as you're trying to use the tools or navigate the workspace, and just see how you do. Good luck!